This week on the Hollywood and Toto podcast, it's time. It's well past time to fire Whoopi Goldberg from The View. Did she go too far? Technically, yes, but she's been going too far for far too long. And we talk with comedian Mike Hammock, who got a once in a lifetime gig on the Kill Tony podcast. Yeah, that's where Tony Hinchcliffe cracks wise and tells all the jokes you're not supposed to tell.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Baseball legend Rickey Henderson was an odd duck, a great player, an incredible base stealer. He was everything. And he was weird, eccentric even. And when he would do something that was a little bit odd, people would say the same thing. It's just Rickey being Rickey. You know, I thought about that recently when hearing so many clips coming from The View, and more specifically from Whoopi Goldberg. You want to laugh, you want to roll your eyes, you want to say, you know what, it's just Whoopi being Whoopi. It's what she does. It's inconsequential. You know what? It's not inconsequential anymore. It's time for someone to stand up, someone, an adult in the room, to say, hey, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. This just is gone too far. Now, we've been covering her in recent weeks, having a laugh at times, being more concerned about what she has to say at other times. But just in the last few days alone, she said multiple things that just, whew. Well, let's start with this. She recently said that she might consider quitting The View, but, she's a working girl. She's got to make a living. It's not easy to live in our society. Now, I could make something glib and say, thank you for the Biden administration, but then I did a little bit of Googling on Whoopi Goldberg, and she allegedly has a net worth of $60 million. And I guarantee she's getting millions a year for hosting that show. So right away, we're talking cuckoo land. Just plain cuckoo. And by the way, what an insult to everyday Americans who are just scraping by, who are trying to make ends meet, who are struggling in this really terrible economy. What an insult for a millionaire to say, gosh, I can barely afford my rent. Just absurd. That's one. And I think we covered this a couple of weeks ago on the Hitcast. Whoopi Goldberg said a new Trump administration would rip apart interracial marriages. Now, never mind the fact that the new vice president-elect, J.D. Vance, is in an interracial marriage. Whoopi didn't seem to think about that. But then again, I don't think Whoopi does a scintilla of research before any time the cameras roll. Seems irresponsible to say the very least, and certainly outrageous behavior. Again, maybe good enough to be fired, honestly, in a sane world. But, we don't live in a sane world. So it takes multiple outrageous moments to even consider having someone fired. But here's the third one. Now, this is fairly new, but Peter Hegseth, who is a Fox News personality, well, he was just named as Donald Trump's choice for the Secretary of Defense. It's a tremendous appointment. It's a tremendous responsibility. And it seemed like Hegseth was an odd choice because he's hosting Fox News. But then you do an ounce of research and you find out, well, no, this guy's a little bit deeper than that. And let me just read a little bit more about him. First of all, he's got 2 Bronze Stars for the work he's done in combat. That's nothing to shake a stick at. But let me read from his biography just to give you a little bit more information about what he has been up to in the last 20, 30 years. I joined the Army in 2001 because I wanted to serve my country. Extremists attacked us in 9/11 and we went to war. I became an infantry officer in 2003. I guarded terrorists at Guantanamo Bay in 2004. I led men in combat in Iraq in 2005. I pulled bodies out of burning vehicles in Afghanistan in 2012. I held a riot shield outside the White House in 2020. That's just part of his experience. He has lived combat. He has been in the military for a very long time. He's also worked with different military groups and charities. He's got some credentials. Now, you could say they're not enough. You could say he should have been in the system. But, that's what Donald Trump has been doing, kind of working outside the system, bringing in people who have unique and powerful skill sets that maybe they can bring something new to the equation. We'll have to wait and see. We don't know if he'll be a great pick or a terrible pick. Now, listen to what Whoopi Goldberg and her fellow View hosts said about Hegseth just hours after the announcement was made.
Is that true? So is this the guy who's qualified to make decisions about the most powerful military in the world, who clearly does not know anything about the military?
You know, and also I feel insulted. I'm a morning TV host, and I've been here the longest.
Yes.
Where's my ambassadorship to Italy, Donald?
Okay, a quick note. Now, either her fellow View hosts are as dumb as Whoopi Goldberg, a distinct possibility, or they're just trying to hide the reality from the viewers. Not good. As Adam Carolla often says, liar or stupid. I don't know. Don't know what the situation is, but I do know it is wildly unprofessional. And I'm sorry, Whoopi, you've got to go. Now, listen, the ABC head honcho could fire all those hosts. They're all terrible in their own way. But I think firing just Whoopi would send the right message. And let me explain why. First of all, I believe that she's been on the show the longest. I know Joy Behar has been on there a very long time as well. But the newer hosts like Sunny Hostin, they don't have the legacy that Whoopi Goldberg has. Whoopi, I don't know if it's ever been said officially, but she is the unofficial leader of this show. She's the mother hen. She's the person that they all look back on to kind of set the agenda and often to share some common sense. And over the years, she has shared some common sense, to her credit. Now, again, this is not about politics. This is not about left or right. This is about sharing wildly insane information again and again and again on the show. Now, to fire her would also send a message to the other people on The View. Hey, get your facts in line or you're gone too. Now, if you remember when Meghan McCain was on the show, she was the true right of center voice. Not a Trump fan at all, but she certainly bounced back and fought back with the show's co-host and made for great TV. You really need that kind of tension, that friction. They don't really want to have that anymore. But what Meghan McCain also did was her homework. She either would whip out notes in front of her or just recite them from memory and share some very specific information to back up her arguments. Again, you could agree or disagree, but when you watch The View today, it's almost abundantly clear that they don't know what they're talking about. They don't have a clue. It is embarrassing. This is a nationally syndicated show that's been on for decades. How could you say that Peter Hegseth is just a Fox News anchor without realizing the history he brings to that position? Again, you could disagree. You could say other people are better. You could disagree with some of his policies or some of his thinking. Hey, that's perfectly fine. Now, again, I'm a free speech zealot. It's very important to me. It's one of the reasons why I was elated at the Trump victory, because I thought the Biden-Harris regime's censorship plans could be, they're not going to go away, but they would be certainly less dramatic, less in our face, less aggressive. I think if they had won in a landslide, I think Twitter would be in trouble. I think a lot of us would be in trouble on social media and elsewhere. I think it would have been a very bad situation, carrying on the themes we've seen over the last 10 years. So I think there's a pause in that. But I don't think firing her is a free speech issue. She's been allowed to talk and talk for quite some time now, and she's an idiot. And I don't say that loosely. And now she's an embarrassment, and not just to herself and not just to The View, but to ABC as well, and to all of broadcasting in a sense. I mean, this is a show that is dedicated to empower women. How do you feel out there, women? Do you like her being a representation of you, the way you think, the way you operate, the way you research, the way you argue points? It is about time to get her off that show. I'm sorry, Whoopi. You've got Sister Act 3 in the can, or that's in the works. You can go film that to your heart's content, do other projects, maybe go back to stand-up comedy. Have at it. Be whoever you want to be. Say whatever you want to say. But by God, would you get off The View? This is embarrassing. Would someone pull the plug on this woman? It is enough. Well, just when everyone is talking about the Kill Tony podcast and its host. The host is Tony Hinchcliffe, a very funny roast comedian. The show, Kill Tony, invites other comedians, both amateurs and professionals alike, onto the stage, and they get to tell jokes for a full minute. And then, of course, Tony and friends will judge them. might mock them, might celebrate them. You never know what's going to happen on the Kill Tony podcast.
How long you been doing stand-up comedy for?
I want to say it's right around 3 years.
3
now.
years. And what do you do for work other than put body parts into your refrigerator?
And of course, Tony Hinchcliffe was just at the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden just a few days before the election. He went on stage first and told a whole bunch of jokes, and one of them was about garbage and Puerto Rico. It landed at the venue with a thud. It also landed with a thud with pundits and a lot of people, both on the left and the right, including myself. I'm a big fan of Tony Hinchcliffe. I thought it was just remarkably unfunny. Now, I know that Puerto Rico has a landfill problem, but the way it was maneuvered into the monologue, the way it was expressed, I just thought it was a clunker. But you know what? It was a joke. It was one joke from a roast comedian and everyone lost their minds. And I think a lot of people on the left hoped that that would maybe sway the election in some capacity. It didn't. But the show, Kill Tony, remains hot. Matter of fact, the show has sold out Madison Square Garden without the orange man bad guy. Pretty impressive. So today's guest on the show, well, he's a fan of Kill Tony as well. In fact, he's a comedian, a professional comedian, and a pretty good one at that. And he thought, I could maybe raise my profile if I go watch the show, put my name in the hat, and just see if he draws it. And again, for those who don't know Kill Tony, what they do is they have many, many people drop their names in the hat. And if he plucks out your name, you get 1 minute to tell your jokes your way. That's the game. And sometimes you get hundreds of people trying to get their jokes on the stage. It's a very tough call. And when Mike Hammock went there, he put his name in the bucket. They called it once. Well, I'm going to stop it. He's going to share the full story, but just know he did get to tell his jokes at the venue, and he killed. Again, another reason why I wanted to have him on the show. So here's Mike Hammock, funny guy from Colorado. Check out what he has to say and hear his behind-the-scenes stories about the Kill Tony podcast. All right, well, Mike, thanks for joining the show. I love interviewing comedians for a lot of different reasons. I'm so curious about what they do, the inspiration behind their work. So just give me a quick origin story here. I'm a journalist. We don't make money. To be a comedian is such a grind. It's such a tough field. How did you first enter, and what was the experience like?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. I grew up listening to like old time radio shows. In Colorado Springs, we had a radio station that played like Fibber McGee and Molly and George Burns and Gracie Allen and kind of these old stuff. So I always kind of liked comedy, and then I grew up watching The Daily Show, and watching the old Comedy Central specials. I didn't know that comedy was something you could do, like, as a person. I kind of thought these people must be coming out of some, like, comedy academy or something like that. And then in college, I was 22, 23. I went with my girlfriend at the time to go see her friend do stand-up at an open mic, a guy named Josh Skillman. And I remember watching him and thinking, like, oh, that I can do that. Like, that I can do. And so I wrote a couple of jokes, and I went back, and I was so nervous, I think I blacked out. But I remember getting some sort of laugh or reaction. So I just went back and did that again and again. And then I got my first paying gig. And that really locked me in, that somebody would give me $20 to tell jokes was like the world. And then I moved down to Denver, which has great clubs. And I've just been working there since.
Excellent. Now, it's a learning process. You got to get your stage time. You got to work through the beats. You got to suffer through some bad sets or even some bad audiences who are just not receptive. Was the learning curve for you, was it hard? Was it just par for the course? How would you describe the early days? Because I imagine that you take some bruises and bumps along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I progressed pretty quickly. I think I maybe had it a bit easier than most. It was a good time for comedy as well. The Denver scene was kind of coming together. I don't know what it looked like kind of in the early O's and late 90s and stuff, but there were a really good crop of comedians coming up, and everyone kind of supports each other, and it's easier to do well if everyone else on the show is doing well. So I had a pretty easy time of it in that sense. That being said, I mean, the entire life is a grind. You go out to open mics 6 nights a week, 3 or 4 mics a night, and you are just throwing jokes that you hope are funny into audiences that are, maybe not giving it back to you in the way that you wanted. So yeah, the entire lifestyle is a grind, but it's very addictive.
The addictive is the sort of the response from the audience, the creativity. What fuels that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to describe. It's kind of something like you try it and you either immediately hooked or you're like, I will never do this again. And it's not that different of experience for either person. There's just something about kind of going up there, saying something and knowing what the audience response is going to be. It's like being it's like being kind of a nerdy rock star in a sense. And so you kind of just get this immediate feedback that what you thought or your idea was good, or maybe not, maybe bad. And they, that can be a really kind of powerful drug. And then when you can start stringing it together where it's always good, then man, for 5 minutes or 10 minutes of the day, you're going to be looking pretty cool, and it's going to feel really good. So yeah.
One of the things I've kind of noticed in the last, I guess, 10 years is that it used to be New York and LA, maybe Boston and Chicago as well. You had to be there. You got to travel there, relocate. And now, of course, Austin is a major hub. It's not just New York and LA. And, you're in Colorado Springs, you're near Denver. Is that now the new normal where you can be in these sort of, I don't want to say atypical, but not the usual spots for comedy and still have a career and still thrive?
Oh, absolutely. I would never say that like New York or LA are like dying in the comedy scene, but they're definitely holding a lot less sway. YouTube and the internet changed a ton of that. There are, people like Bo Burnham got famous. I don't know if he lived in LA, but it was from the internet. And you're seeing more and more of that now. The guys like Matt Rife and some of these other huge superstars who kind of got famous making TikTok videos or posting it online. We have our pride and joy is guys like Sam Talent and the guys in the Grolics who got a TV show off of their clips from YouTube. You definitely don't need to live in these places anymore. And Austin certainly has just this huge swell of people moving from New York and LA to Austin. Mainly because if you're an A-lister, there's a little bit less competition on that level. And B, it's just kind of more like the Wild West these days. People don't necessarily want to go grind it out, try to get a spot at the Cellar in New York, living, in a shoebox when they could get just as kind of successful just as quickly in Denver. And Denver is, I would say, top 3, maybe top 4 with Austin. It definitely, I would say, beats out Chicago and Boston at this point because the scene is incredible. You've got Comedy Works downtown, which is one of the best clubs in the entire world. But there's also this kind of Achilles heel / crux where there's no industry in Denver. A manager's not to discover you in Denver. An agent's not going to find you in Denver. They might find you online. But so the entire scene is just a bunch of people who want to be good. There's no one fighting over spots at this special club. There's a really structured tier system for getting in at Comedy Works and working that. So all of the comics have a really good, for the most part, really good relationship with one another, and they all work together really well, and it makes it kind of like a perfect place to become a good comic.
That's interesting. It sounds almost counterintuitive, but it also maybe is the pure nature of the craft where distractions are less here. You can just be funny, work on your material, and go from there.
Yeah, no one's upset if somebody gets a good room, if somebody opens up a spot in a good room, no one's jealous because there's so many good rooms. There's a guy named Steve Vanderplug who I think runs at this point 15 different brewery shows in Denver. He kind of runs all of them. But there's no, you go to Austin, 300 people sign up for Kill Tony every week. And I'm talking to a guy there who signed up 50 times, I think, and still hasn't gotten on. So that I'm sure can create this kind of angst and pressure and resentment that can probably derail you a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he must hate you because you're 1 for 1. So
yeah, dude.
You went there basically. So you're there in the crowd. You've put your name in the bucket, crossing your fingers. You sit in the crowd and wait for the name. Is that basically the process?
Yeah. And for me, it's even crazier. So I knew a couple of guys down there, a couple named Nikolai Roscoe and Luke Stam, both buddies of mine who had moved from Denver or the Springs. And so I've just popped down for a few days. It was my birthday in essence. So I was just taking a break from the kids. And went and did some shows and then signed up for, before that, the Mothership Open Mic, which is like 150 people sign up. I got that, not realizing that I had to check in. I ran across the street to Poor Choices to sign up for Kill Tony. My buddy runs over, he's like, you got to check in. I run back. I'd missed it by 2 minutes. They'd already put someone else's name down. So I'm just devastated. I'm over there drinking my heart out with the comics. Sitting there knowing Kill Tony's probably not going to happen. But then I was I think the 4th spot pulled. So yeah, 300 comics are waiting out of a bar. 2 producers run out from the alleyway behind the Mothership. They shout out your name. You've got 10 seconds. They check your wristband to make sure that you are who you say you are. They run you back across. They wand you. They take your watch and everything. They take you back up and they give you the spiel, don't touch the comics, don't approach anybody, you know, you got a minute when you touch the X, have fun. And then you just vibrate for 15 seconds, waiting and waiting and waiting. And then bam, they push you out there and they say your name and you got a minute.
Yeah. No, I liked your set. Were you happy with what went down, or how was your reaction?
Yeah, I'm really happy.
Often we're critical of each other.
I think one of the tricks of Kill Tony is having a good interview, and I was just so sure I wasn't going to get it. I was just so convinced that like it wasn't. I didn't think of anything clever to say. I went into that just so blank. So I think my interview could have been a little bit more interesting or funny. But the jokes themselves, that's where I feel the most confident just about in anything.
Yeah. You know, I'm older than you. I grew up on Howard Stern, the 90s Howard Stern, not the one today. And when I listen to Kill Tony, it feels like there's a kindred spirit there, that it's similar in that sense. It's blowing up big. I mean, they're at Madison Square Garden. What's your take on the show, I guess, both as a comedian and also someone who's been there? What's the secret sauce there? I mean, obviously Tony's lightning quick, but what's your take on the whole experience and the whole program itself?
Yeah, I think it's the freedom of it. You know, they cater originally, I guess, and now it's kind of expanded out. But we came from, you know, in the late teens and early 2020s to just kind of like everyone was a little bit on pins and needles. Everyone was a little bit kind of careful about what they were saying and what they were talking about. Not everyone, but like the main crowd of kind of comics. And then from that, you just get this guy who's kind of like, we're going to say whatever the hell we want. We're going to do whatever we want. We're going to, you know, have a hot waitress coming out bringing drinks. We're going to have comics dressed as Trump and Biden. We're going to do it, you know, as crazy as we can. And then the structure, you know, it's a timeless structure. It's Star Search. It's America's Got Talent. It's all of those things. It's you come out and perform for him. And that, you know, that I think just creates this kind of looseness where anything can happen. There's kind of magic to it.
Yeah.
And
so they tell you like, hit your mark, don't touch the comedians, but they're not saying don't say this or don't say that.
No, nothing like that.
They're all good.
No, that would be so counterintuitive to the spirit. And yeah, it's also just wild because you don't know who you're going to get. I've done comedy for, you know, a decade. This could be some homeless dude who signed up and has never done stand-up in his life. And I think that kind of stuff happens. So that's part of the wildness too, is they don't know who they're putting on stage with some of the biggest comedians in the world. So there's a little bit even like an element of danger to it, which is really fun.
Does being on that show, I mean, obviously it's a learning experience. It's exciting. Does it change your career at all? Do you get more contacts? I mean, I'm reaching out to you.
I mean, I'm here now, right? Yeah, I mean, there are.
I mean, this is the big time, of course. Other shows are lesser, but
yeah. So
did anything happen after that?
You hear, there's a tiered system. If you get no notebook, you bombed. If you get a little notebook, you did well. If you get a big notebook, you did great. And then you get invited back for the secret show on Thursday. I wasn't going to be there, so he was nice enough to put me up in the other room that night rather than come back for the secret show because I wasn't going to be there, which was super cool. And then there's a golden ticket where you can come back whenever you want. Didn't get a golden ticket. Did get to go to the other room, which was really cool. Did pretty well over there. And yeah, it can. There are comics on there who are now regulars. There's a guy named William Montgomery who's also from Denver, who started the same way. He got up and just kind of blew him away. He's a real kind of wild character, and he now he's on there all the time. You know, he gets name dropped on Rogan. For me, I got a couple of reach outs from a few clubs. I got, you know, maybe 15% boost in my Instagram followers, which is always nice. That's kind of the currency of the day. And yeah, just trying to keep the momentum going with it.
When you think about being a comedian today, I feel like the competition may have never been so fierce because everyone can do it. Everyone can put a YouTube channel together. Everybody can go on Instagram and be funny. At the same time, all these different resources are available to you. Do you feel that sort of that pull where more competition, but more opportunity? What's it like? I mean, every comedian's an entrepreneur in a sense. Where do you kind of look at the culture and how you go forward right now?
Yeah, I never thought, even as I kind of started to do well and succeeded in comedy over the last years, I never thought this was like a real option for me. I kind of always just thought this was going to be like a hobby that I'd be pretty good at. COVID kind of changed that a bit for me. I kind of saw people doing stuff online that I kind of looked at and was like, geez, this is getting a million likes. So I started to for the first time a couple of years ago, put stuff on social media. And kind of seeing now that that's something I probably should have been doing all along, because social media is where people are pulling. It's where they're talent scouting now. It's you just go, you look at the followers, you look at the views, you look at the clips. If you're a club owner, it's kind of a no-brainer. The downside of that is, like you said, anyone can do it. And you often get people now who are selling out clubs and stuff like that who aren't very good at stand-up itself. They're very good at TikTok or Instagram or making funny videos, which is just a totally different skill set. And it creates in me, at least, a little bit of resentment. I'm like, come on, man. Like, I shouldn't be, because, anyone... They want to sell tickets. They want to do it. But in the comedy community, there's starting to be, not a full war, I don't want to say that, but like there's a little bit of like a dividing line between like the internet famous people and like the road dog comics who have just been like working on the craft for the past whatever. So there is more opportunity in that sense. You can reach out to clubs and get fans that are, 10 countries away. But at the same time, you see people who are just good at getting fans, and then they roll in and they do a 20-minute stand-up set with a 2-hour meet and greet afterwards, because that's all anyone wants. And that can get us, a couple of us, a little chalky.
I get it. You're a fairly new dad. You got 2 kids, pretty young. I imagine that has a significant impact on the work you do as far as the material and bits and routines. What's that journey been like?
Oh my God, I'm so tired. You heard me say on Kill Tony, I have a 3-year-old with a sleep disorder, so he is up every 2 or 3 hours every night. Never think he slept through the night 4 times in his entire life. So more than anything, that's just kind of kept me off the road for a bit. I went out to Vegas this last week, and I just stayed for a night. When I was out in Austin, I just stayed for 3 days. Couldn't stay for Secret Show, just because my poor wife just has to keep the baby at night, and then she's got to deal with him when he wakes up. Material-wise, I've always kind of made fun of the comics who become dads, and then suddenly all their jokes are about their kids. That being said, I can feel it creeping into my set. I'm telling more, like even that joke, the one I told on Kill Tony about the mortgage, that is a direct result of me I can just feel them kind of seeping in, and I spend more time with them than I do with anyone else. So yeah, I get it. I kind of try to keep my edge a little bit with what I like to joke about, but the kids are definitely in there more and more.
Gotcha. Before I let you go, what would you like to do next? I mean, just kind of growing, getting bigger gigs, any sort of like dreams you've got as far as comedy? I mean, it used to be, I want to have my own sitcom, and I think the world is different now, but what are your aspirations kind of moving forward? I mean, you're obviously on the rise.
Yeah. I mean, that's the funny thing about dreams. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, it would have been get on Kill Tony. Now it's get on Kill Tony again, I guess. No, it's I'd like to start getting out on the road more often. The kids are hitting an age where they're a little bit more reasonable, and you can deal with them a little bit better. They can be babysat a bit easier. So I'd like to start getting some more tour dates together, going out on the road, working with some bigger comics, and getting into some of the larger, more kind of effective festivals. And then after that, I have a album out on Spotify right now, which came out about a year ago. I'd like to get another one of those together and really see if I can pump it up a bit.
Yeah, what's the title on that one?
Charm Offensive.
Gotcha. Excellent. Well, you can find that there. Also, I want to let people follow you on Instagram, which is really one of the key places where people find their humor. I know my brother keeps sending me old Modern Family clips. I'm like, okay, Jim, I'm good. I got it. It's a funny show. Give me some new stuff. But your Instagram is the Mike Hammock.
Yep.
Is that the correct handle?
Yep.
Excellent. And if you're in the greater Denver area, you can check out Mike at Looney's. That's in Colorado Springs. That's November 15th and the 16th. And then the following night, November 17th, he's going to be at Comedy Works downtown, which is a great club. And it is a cool scene here in the greater Denver area. So I am lucky that I'm part of that. But you're a significant part of that. You're telling the jokes that make us laugh and distract us from the world around us. But Mike, thank you so much. Keep climbing. And I'm so glad you were 1 for 1 in Kill Tony. Worked out well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for the show this week. Again, thank you for listening. Thank you to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. And I want you to check out, if you haven't already, our Short on Hollywood series. It is on my YouTube channel, Hollywood in Toto. You got to go to the shorts, just go to that section, and you'll get all the Hollywood headlines with, I'd say, a little bit of snark, but there's a lot of snark there. Again, Leonardo DiCaprio celebrated his 50th birthday with Brad Pitt, Steven Spielberg, and other celebrities. The big surprise? Greta Thunberg popped out of the birthday cake. Speaking of cake, Madonna devoured a fuck Trump cake following his Election Day victory. That was after she deflowered an apple pie. And Dwayne Johnson admits he does pee in bottles on movie sets. We smell what The Rock is cooking. Asparagus there. Again, it's all under a minute. I'm actually having my son co-producing these segments. I think he's having a blast. I know I am. And I think sometimes they're pretty funny. You'll have to see for yourself to see if you enjoy them, or don't quit your day job, which is a very a very real possibility if you're not enjoying that. But I'm having a blast. I think I'm getting better and better each week. But do check it out. It's Short on Hollywood at the Hollywood in Toto YouTube channel. And again, if you're listening on iTunes, Rumble, YouTube, wherever, just give us a like, a subscribe, spread the word. Tell people about it if you're enjoying it. I definitely appreciate that. And I will speak to you all next time.